McCay was eminently an artist. I mean, that's what he loved more than anything else. And people have asked me often why he didn't proceed with this business and go into on a production basis and make a big business out of it. And my only explanation for that is that I could never conceive Winsor McCay doing it, because he got so much pleasure out of just doing the drawings that I just couldn't conceive him sitting in a room with 10 or 15 artists doing work that he just loved to do. So that to me, it was just simply out of the question. He just never gave it a thought, I don't think. I never heard him talk about like going into to a proposition where he visualized it being in what we know Walt Disney is now. You know, never anything like that. He just did it because he enjoyed doing it. I can remember ever since I was a little kid, I used to make little theatrical sets, you know, and engines and things. So that when I came to Sheepshead Bay in about 1906, I got wind of a boy in the school in Sheepshead Bay, 98, and his father was quite a celebrated artist. And when I found out about that, the boy and I became very good friends. I saw to that. He arranged for me to come and meet his father, who lived in Sheepshead Bay and worked in Sheepshead Bay. And that was my first encounter with McCay. And when we went in to see him, and he was working in the front room of a private house in those days on 17th Street in Sheepshead Bay. And he was working on a Little Nemo picture at that time, and doing the drawing on it. And after the introductions, he was very congenial and very friendly, and for somehow or other after that, he took a liking to me, and I had an inside track with him from then on. And I was one of the few that was privileged to be in the room working with him, and we'd get into some interesting conversations about different things, and he was pretty broad-minded about lots of things. And that's how I became acquainted with him. And then when he came to this moving picture business, he knew I was going to art school at the time, up the Art Students League, and he asked me to come over and help out. So he'd hand me a batch of these drawings, and I'd take them home and work on them on Saturdays and days I didn't go to school, and nights. So that's how I came to get tied up with him, and we became very good friends after that. Winsor McCay's was a real American success story. He was born the son of a Michigan lumberman, and he had this God-given talent for drawing that he developed without academic training into a great artistic skill. McCay took to the road about 1889 when he was a teenager, and he became a poster painter for traveling circuses and melodrama companies. And he drew out ads for freak shows and museums in Chicago and Cincinnati. Eventually, Winsor McCay became famous for his newspaper comic strips, the most popular being Little Nemo in Slumberland, which began in the New York Herald in 1905. Little Nemo in Slumberland was an immediate success around the world, and it raised the comic strip cartoon to the level of fine art by virtue of McCay's unsurpassed virtuosity of draftsmanship and imagination. These Little Nemo panels demonstrate McCay's fascination with progressive movement in settings and characters, and his almost movie-like presentation of illusion of time and space. McCay's energy and drive enabled him in 1906 to devise and star in his own unique vaudeville act, in which he toured for 11 years, whenever his newspaper commitments allowed. Yeah, the vaudeville act was a very sweet and lovely thing, and I can remember he'd have a blackboard on the stage, and he'd come out and he'd draw two figures, a simple childish head on two facing pictures, and then with his blackboard eraser, he'd erase one and go over to the other, and he finally brought these two characters through middle age, marriage, and up to the very old people. And it was quite a thing, and I remember that particularly the Victor Herbert's Sweet Mystery of Life was the theme song that went all through this thing. That's right. They made a bet that they'd do this animated cartoon. I don't know how serious the bet was, but anyhow, that's what the story went. And so he started out on this, and probably more or less of a novelty act, you know. He had no intention of going into a business, because nobody was doing any of that work at that time, you know. That's McCay at the drawing board. That's Winsor McCay's hand drawing some of the characters from his comic strip Little Nemo in Slumberland. This film, made in 1911, was used as a prologue to McCay's first animated cartoon. It was called Little Nemo, and it contains the most beautiful, flowing, and well-timed animation ever drawn before the Walt Disney Studios came on the scene about a dozen years later. He was a very fast worker and a very skilled draftsman. Those are supposed to be his friends, but they're really actors, and this scene was filmed at the Vitagraph Studios in Brooklyn. You see, Winsor McCay was not the first man to make animated cartoons, but he was the first to consider animation a new art form, and he approached each of the 10 films he made as an artist. For example, he preferred to do all the drawings in this film by himself without resorting to shortcuts. And there were over 4,000 separate drawings used to make these characters move. Well, this is very, very interesting. I haven't seen this in probably 60 years, but this is one of the first. This is drawing number 336 of the Gertie series that Winsor McCay made, and I happened to work on them. I did the background here, the rocks and stones and things like that, and There's a very crude arrangement. We had these cardboards cut and printed, and then we had to make these register marks in the corner so that we could put the papers on them and take and paste them down. And that was a tedious job compared to the later process that they used. But it's very interesting to see this type of drawing. This is a rice paper that had a very nice tooth to it, and it took the drawings very, very well. But it was a long, drawn-out process. McCay used Gertie as part of his vaudeville act. The film was projected onto a large screen, and McCay would stand in front of it and talk to his cartoon dinosaur, and the audience loved it. Out, Gertie, and make a pretty bow. Oh, stop that. Be a good girl now and bow to the audience. Thanks. Now raise your right foot. That's good. Now raise your left foot. Never mind that sea monster, Gertie. Raise your left foot. You're a bad girl. Shame on you. Oh, don't cry. Here, catch this apple. Now will you raise your left foot? Gertie, don't hurt Jumbo. Did you see that four-winged lizard? Yes? Are you in the habit of seeing things? Are you fibbing to me? Will you have a little drink? Gertie will now show that she isn't afraid of me and will take me for a ride. Alley up. I Roger Mountain in 1914. That's as near as I can come to a date that this was released for. McCay was incensed at the wanton brutality of the sinking of the liner, Lusitania, which was torpedoed by a German submarine without warning in 1915. He proposed to make an animated cartoon graphically depicting the horrible tragedy that killed almost 1,200 innocent people. This film, which took 22 months to complete, is the result. It contains over 25,000 drawings on celluloid and is the only McCay film to depict an actual event rather than a fantasy. See, I did the waves, and there was a series of 16 drawings. Mr. McCay's drawing number 17 would be my number 1 again, and that's the way we'd continue through the whole series of drawings. Before the Sinking the Lusitania film was in, I went to Philadelphia. I got signed up with an art service in Philadelphia, and I was down there for several years. And I had to. I didn't know exactly what was going on as far as the film went. And when I came back, then I used to visit McCay regularly, you know, and until his death. Which was very sudden and happened in 1934, if I recall. While I was doing, I went to work again as an advertising artist here in New York until I decided to go on the racetrack with my father. And I was with him for 30 years, and during that time I did very little work in the art line. I never was interested in that kind of tedious work. That was too much for me. I put in all the time I wanted to put in on animation. And I probably was simplified a lot since my days, and maybe but easier, but I just didn't understand why anybody would want to make 10 or 15,000 drawings.